In 2013, the king of mobile phones surrendered. Not Apple, not Samsung, Nokia. Not because it ran out of money, not because customers stopped buying its phones, and not because another company was bigger. The craziest part? Nokia was still winning. For years, this was the company everyone thought could never fall. The brand that controlled the mobile phone industry. The phones that were everywhere. The name that billions of people trusted. But now, the company that once ruled the world of phones was selling its mobile business to Microsoft. And that left the world asking one question. How does a company go from controlling an entire industry to losing everything? Because years earlier, while Nokia was celebrating its success, something was changing. A new future was being built. And Nokia didn't realize that the biggest threat to its empire was already arriving. To understand how Nokia lost everything, you first need to understand how impossible that sounded. Because there was a time when Nokia didn't just lead the phone industry, it was the phone industry. Back in the early 2000s, Nokia was everywhere. In Europe, in Africa, in Asia, in America. No matter where you went, you would see that familiar logo. And if you didn't have a Nokia phone, your parents probably did. And if your parents didn't have one, your friends definitely did. The company sold hundreds of millions of phones, year after year, model after model. And people loved them. Not because they were flashy, not because they were expensive, but because they worked. You charged them, you used them, and somehow the battery still had energy left days later. A concept modern smartphones seem to have forgotten. And then there was the durability. Dropping a Nokia wasn't a tragedy. It was usually just part of the day. Many people joked that the phone would survive longer than the floor. But Nokia's biggest strength wasn't just the phones, it was trust. People trusted Nokia. Customers trusted Nokia, investors trusted Nokia, and competitors feared Nokia. The company had become so successful that very few people could imagine a future without it. From the outside, Nokia looked unstoppable, like a king sitting comfortably on a throne. But success can create a dangerous feeling. The belief that what worked yesterday will always work tomorrow. And while Nokia was enjoying its dominance, the future was quietly being built. In 2007, the phone industry changed forever. Steve Jobs walked onto a stage and introduced something that looked simple, but would completely change the way people thought about phones. The iPhone. A phone with a large touchscreen, no physical keyboard, a completely different way of interacting with a device. At the time, many people were unsure. The phone was expensive. Some questioned whether people would really pay that much for a phone. And Nokia had every reason to feel confident. They were still the market leader. They had millions of customers. They had years of experience. But the iPhone wasn't just another phone. It represented something bigger. The future was changing. Phones were no longer just devices for calling and texting. They were becoming computers that could fit in your pocket. And this is where Nokia's biggest challenge began. Because the problem wasn't that Nokia didn't know smartphones were coming. They did. The problem was speed. While Apple was creating a new smartphone experience, Nokia was trying to protect the one that had already made them successful. And in business, the thing that makes you successful today can sometimes become the thing holding you back tomorrow. Then another competitor appeared, Samsung. And suddenly, Nokia wasn't just watching Apple. They were fighting a completely new battle. a battle for the future of mobile phones. And for the first time in years, the king was no longer leading the race. It was trying to catch up. The problem was not that Nokia had no ideas. The problem was turning those ideas into action. Inside the company, many people understood that the mobile industry was changing. But Nokia was a massive organization, and massive organizations often move slowly. Every decision required time. Every change required approval. And while Nokia was trying to protect what made it successful, its competitors were moving faster. Apple had created a new smartphone experience. Samsung was quickly improving its position, and Nokia was caught between two worlds. The old world, where it was the king, and the new world, where the rules were completely different. One of Nokia's biggest challenges was software. The company had incredible hardware, but smartphones were no longer only about the phone itself. They were about the experience behind it. The apps, the operating system, the ecosystem. And this is where Nokia started losing ground. The company that once decided what the future of phones looked like was now reacting to the companies creating that future. By the time Nokia understood the size of the challenge, the industry had already moved on. The company that once decided what phones people wanted was now trying to convince people why they should choose Nokia again. Apple had created a new standard, Samsung was growing quickly, and Nokia was running out of time. In 2011, Nokia made a major decision. The company partnered with Microsoft. The goal was simple: create something new, fight back, and return to the top. But comebacks are not easy, especially in an industry that changes every year. The smartphone market kept moving, the competition kept improving, and Nokia couldn't recover the ground it had lost. Then, in 2013, the moment that once seemed impossible arrived. The company that once looked untouchable was finally facing the reality nobody expected. Microsoft bought Nokia's mobile phone business. The company that once ruled the world of phones was no longer making the phones that made it famous. And that is what makes Nokia's story so powerful. Because Nokia wasn't destroyed overnight. There was no single moment when everything collapsed. No one day where the empire suddenly disappeared. It was a slow change, a series of decisions, a failure to move fast enough, and a reminder that even the biggest companies in the world are not protected from change. Because success can create comfort, and comfort can become dangerous. The same thing that makes a company successful today can become the reason it struggles tomorrow. Nokia's story is not just about phones. It is about every company, every entrepreneur, and every creator. Because the world never stops changing. The question is not, can you become successful? The real question is, can you keep adapting when success arrives? Because reaching the top is only the beginning. The hardest challenge is staying there. Because the giants who survive are not always the biggest. They are the ones who keep moving. This is Empire Files.